Hello and welcome to my Dominion Tower Reward Gloves review. This is just going to be my opinion on what the reward gloves do and how kind of useful they really are, in my opinion. Obviously somebody's going to have a different opinion, but this is just kind of what I think. So these are the three gloves in my inventory, and obviously the Barrow's gloves, which I'll compare them to. So the Goliath gloves, they actually give the best bonuses or equal to the best bonuses as Barrow's gloves. I'll compare them in a second, but you can just see that. And they also, all three gloves have particle effects, which is kind of nice. So not that special, but they do look fairly nice. So the Swift gloves, they have the green particle effects instead of the orange. Attack bonuses are all 0 except for range, which is obviously rather high. It's the highest range in the game by 2, I think, over mercenary gloves. Other than that, not that special of gloves. And the spellcaster gloves gives some attack bonus to everything and +8 to mage, so it's not that special. And they obviously give all these stab bonuses and stuff like that to defense as well. So spellcaster gloves aren't that bad, really. And then just Barrow's gloves, you can kind of see there. I can compare these two as well. This is just the comparison. So, as you can see, they're all equal except for Goliath gloves are better in all melee stats, including strength. A little bit worse in weight, but who cares? So yeah, Goliath gloves are clearly superior, but then again, they also degrade. And all three of these right now, they degrade at a rate of 1 hour is a full degrade, which is obviously kind of bad, but basically to get them back, all you do is go to the Dominion Tower, kill 5 more bosses, you can get them back. And that takes, 10 minutes tops. But it is kind of annoying because you talk about going to a major boss like Bandos or Armadillo. If you really want to bring one of these gloves, you can't really bring it because it'll degrade halfway through the trip. So unless you're going pretty short on the trip, it's not that useful. Chaotix and I believe Barrow's armor as well last 10 hours. And so the fact that these only last 1 hour is really quite bad. I think I'd much rather Jagex include, 2 or 5 hours at least, and maybe make it so we have to kill 10 bosses to get them back. I mean, 5's really low anyway. 10's still pretty low. So I think that'd just be a lot more of a fair agreement. But so then I went and tested out the gloves. They aren't that bad. They don't hit that hard on most things. They do hit a little bit faster though. They hit, I believe it is as fast as Rapier if you're just punching. And that's really their limitation, that it only helps if you're just punching. Obviously, they do have the +13 strength bonus, so if you are actually fighting somebody with, Rapier or Longsword or whatever, then it does still help. But in terms of the effectiveness of just punching somebody, it's not that helpful, really. I haven't seen the clip yet, but I have hit over 200 or 300 or so with these gloves. There's a 250 right there. And, so that's really hard hitting, and it actually is fairly accurate, but it's not that helpful in most situations. I mean, outside of, either punching a friend or boxing, do you really use just your fist? And, so it's not that helpful outside those situations. And I guess it could be extremely helpful if you went into like a box steak and manage to convince the other person, keep your gloves on. And if they have Barrow's gloves and you have Goliath gloves, well, you'll win 9 times out of 10, even if 10 levels higher than you. And so I just don't really see the practical use outside of that. I mean, obviously you could call them better for boxing, but it's not really that way. The other one I tested out was the magic spell, and it does supposedly hit harder, but it doesn't hit that much harder, as I found. It hits a little bit harder, but not really. And every time that it hit harder for me, it didn't really seem like it was over the max in any way. And it doesn't really seem more accurate or anything. The overall use isn't that big. Now, they do have a few specials, like the Goliath gloves. They have the ability to stun your opponent, which can be pretty helpful. The mage gloves, you kind of do a weird emote when you hit extra hard. So there is that, but it doesn't seem that special in general. The magic gloves also have a chance of reducing the stats of your enemy or your opponent. But just like the Goliath gloves, their main effectiveness is without wearing a staff, which really kind of defeats the purpose, because everybody really wants to be wearing a staff. Obviously, I'm not max mage gear here. I don't have an arcane stream or anything like that, but it just doesn't seem that effective. Plus, the staff gives a pretty good magic bonus that could be pretty helpful. There, I use the special attack again, and in general, it just doesn't seem that useful as a special attack. The only one that kind of seems like a useful thing is one I didn't really get to test out, but the range ones are the Swift gloves. This is straight from the Runescape website. So there's a random chance if you deal over 2/3 of your maximum hit that a special shot will fire 2 arrows. Should one strike the enemy for a maximum hit, the enemy will be stunned. This special does not work with all ranged weapons. I'm pretty sure it works with crossbows, though, just so you know. But, so, if you deal over 2/3, so, that can or cannot happen, there's a chance that you will fire 2 arrows at once. Which, obviously, just firing 2 arrows at once is kind of cool. I mean, deals more damage, period. And then, if you hit a maximum hit with one of those, then the enemy will be stunned. So just overall, that does seem somewhat useful. Deal over 2/3, you can stun the opponent, and that's with a weapon. So that does seem useful. And one disadvantage of those gloves is they obviously have the lowest stab, slash, crush, all those defenses, and attack bonuses. Whereas the glass gloves give pretty much standard of bonuses and a little bit better in theirs. So doesn't seem that useful in general for the gloves, but they do have their special attacks that can become somewhat useful. As I said, for the Goliath gloves, the Swift gloves could be fairly useful for staking. Not the spellcaster gloves could be fairly useful for staking, because you go into like a mage box stake and you could just completely own somebody if you're using these gloves. But once again, that's kind of borderline scamming, because you're basically trying to convince somebody to go into a stake. Now, you could use them just going into a stake kind of with both people wearing the same gloves and just kind of see what happens. But at the same time, that just makes the staking a little bit faster. It doesn't really make it give you an advantage, really. It just, it's just a little bit of a faster stake, especially for the Goliath gloves. I mean, box staking is a very long process in general, but if you have the Goliath gloves, obviously it's going to go a lot faster because you're hitting, 250. And I've had rumors that it can hit up to about 740 if you're in Castle Wars and you're, absolute max Castle Wars. But in general, it just doesn't seem that useful. I mean, yeah, it can max at 740, but I had the clip of the guy fighting me, and the reality was he was kind of raping me because I couldn't stand against him because I just wasn't that accurate. If all you're wearing is the Goliath gloves, you're just not going to hit that often. So that's my opinion. Now, I didn't really test it with any other gear. I mean, maybe if you had like full bandos, which obviously gives a lot of strength bonus, and like a Dragon Defender and all this other stuff that gives huge strength bonuses, then you might be able to do a lot better with the Goliath gloves. Because those obviously give strength bonuses. Goliath gloves only have a plus 13 strength bonus. And so the combination of, maybe another plus 13 or so could really make you hit a lot harder. But I don't know. I didn't really test it out. But that is a possibility. So I guess kind of my final conclusion on the gloves. They are kind of nice gloves. I mean, I really do like the particle effects and stuff like that. But in general, I just don't see that they have a huge amount of uses outside, box staking and mage box staking. But even there, it's debatably useful. I mean, you have to find an opponent that has it. Otherwise, you kind of have to try to convince them that you're not going to scam them, and then you just go and scam them. So, it's not as useful as it really seems, I guess. And the Goliath gloves, obviously, they are the best gloves in the game. So they are useful for that, but then they degrade after an hour. So if you can go to a boss hunt, which is what I generally do, they're not that useful. Now, Goliath gloves are pretty useful for tri-breed in general. Obviously they are equal to or better than Barrow's gloves. But then again, Barrow's gloves don't degrade. So you really have to kind of determine what you want there. But yeah, that's my final conclusion. So you can be happy with it or not, but in general, not that useful. They are kind of nice looking gloves though. Well, thanks for watching. Sorry that kind of rambled on for a long while, but there's a lot I kind of wanted to say about them. But yeah, so thanks for watching. I hope it kind of helped you make a decision about what you really want to do, whether you really want to go get the Goliath gloves or you just want to stick with your Bearer's gloves or whatever gloves you use. But please rate and comment on this video, as it will help me decide what to do in the future. And please subscribe, because hopefully on Wednesday I will be releasing a Slayer Diary. I'm working on that for a while. And then hopefully next week I'll have another guide out. So for those, and talk to you guys later.